Welcome back to After the Fact. The Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, home to 4.4 million Filipinos and 2.1 million registered voters, is undergoing a critical transition. Its interim regional government has been granted 3 more years to implement key reforms before the region holds its first parliamentary elections in 2025. Now, that election was supposed to happen in May this year, but the Bangsamoro Transition Authority convinced legislators here in Manila, and of course President Rodrigo Duterte, that 3 years was not enough to complete the transition. Establishing the BARM, based on the 2014 peace agreement between the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the Aquino administration, was one of the significant achievements of President Rodrigo Duterte. But there's still much to be done in a region that has seen decades of armed conflict and chronic poverty. Tonight, we'll talk about the Bangsamoro as an important campaign agenda, one that requires a solid plan and program from each of the presidential candidates. We're now joined by Attorney Benedicto Bacani. He's the Executive Director of the Institute for Autonomy and Governance. We're also joined by Professor Francisco Pancho Lara Jr. He is the Senior Policy Advisor of International Alert Philippines. Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen, for joining us tonight on the program.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, let's start with the Attorney Bacani. So far, we're less than 2 months before the May 2022 elections, and a lot of issues have been discussed in different debates and forums. But so far, are you hearing enough from our presidential candidates regarding the Bangsamoro agenda, the Bangsamoro issue, the bigger Mindanao peace process?
Well, we had the Christian the forum of the representatives of the presidential candidates. I think it was a comprehensive program, and we're able to see really the position, and there were details also. So what is striking is that at least all the major candidates, except for Bongbong Marcos, which was not represented in the forum, are actually supportive of the peace process. So I think that's a very positive development.
Okay, Attorney Bacani, I think we lost you a bit there. Tanong kasi si Professor Pancho Lara. So we know that there was the Bangsamoro Organic Law. So na-establish yung bagong autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. Pero nandun pa rin syempre yung relations niya with the national government. So ang tanong ko sa inyo, for the next president, how involved should the next president be in the affairs of the region? Especially if most of them, if not all of them, are supportive of the peace process.
Thank you for that question, because I think based on the forum that we had, all the candidates seem to be very interested in paying particular attention to the devolution process, to the BARM, and the experiment that is happening in the Bangsamoro, which is good. No? I think the next president should also do that because, let's face it, this is a model that should be undertaken and seen about how it can be used also in other existing conflict issues still in the Philippines. And then secondly, it's going to show on the administration if they let this go in directions that are not consistent with the Bangsamoro Organic Law or the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro, because there are still a lot of flashpoints happening in the region. And we don't want those flashpoints to worsen.
Attorney Bacani, looking at the campaign platforms of the different presidential candidates, listening to their speeches and the positions taken by their representatives, who do you think has a more or less clear agenda as far as the Bangsamoro is concerned? Or yung mas malalim yung understanding doon sa issue?
As I've said, they're all supportive of the peace process. But the key here is really the role of the national government in the next 3 years, or even the next 6 years. So how involved will be the national government? There are two things involvement dyan. It's supervision and oversight and support doon sa devolution process in terms of providing more resources. So both positive and more more supervision. We've seen the range, So it looks like Mayor Isko, okay, because of the links with Toto Magoda Datu and the United Bangsamoro Justice Party. So nakita yung continuity daw talaga. No? So which means that the MILF, okay, in terms of MILF led transition, that is to be continued. Very clear yun doon, na nakita natin. Now, mukhang balance in my mind, okay, as I look at the view of Leni Robredo, no, which was articulated by Teddy Bagilat, no. So they have a more detailed view of both, no. I think in terms of oversight, looking milestones, we're talking about milestones, no, so clear. And then significantly, very significant din yung kanilang plan, no, to have a cabinet position devoted solely, no, to the Bangsamoro, which is a good thing, no. Kasi yun ay pwedeng hindi lang oversight, kundi real support din, no. And then ayusin yung mga problema in terms of intergovernmental relations, aside from the IGR mechanism, no. Ang dito, yung kay Senator Lacson, no, is really I think more of the oversight, no, and really making the region accountable. Okay, and kay Manny Pacquiao naman, because he was represented by Coco Pimentel, okay, who was one of the authors of the BOL. So they're focusing on the law, no. So talagang we implement the law, no, the BOL. Pero syempre implementation naman. Okay, the law is there. Yes, the law is good. Okay, but the implementation, okay, you need to have a real roadmap, no? So in my mind, okay, the Leni Robredo has a more balanced and more detailed platform, no, moving forward in the next 3-6 years for the Bangsamoro.
Okay, how
about process
for,
at least?
how about for you, Professor Lara? Kasi itong issue ng Bangsamoro napaka-complicated eh. So hindi porke nagkaroon ng peace agreement in 2014, tapos na yung issue, di ba? Kumbaga, talaga may kapayapaan na. So napakaraming sanga-sangang issues kaya nga tayo nagkakaroon transition. So that same question, who do you think has come up so far? Hindi lang based na sa forum, based na sa mga pronouncements nila recently. Sino mas mo kami plano doon sa Bangsamoro?
Well, I agree with Benny doon sa una niya statement, no. It seems that because, you know, they have an advantage. The fellow they sent to the forum was Samira Gutok. Samira Gutok is a Muslim. So she has a very substantial plan. No? So yung kandidato ni Isko actually was coming up with a lot of critical issues, particularly at different levels. So that was really good. I also found the statements, yung sinabi rin ni Benny, no, of Coco Pimentel really very interesting because he always mentioned the constitutional arrangements, yung sinasabi nga, the oversight. And then secondly, he was the one who was actually pointed out the issue of land also, yung laws on land and the protection of minorities, no? So I think that was very interesting. And of course, sinigundahan yun ni Teddy Bagilat, no? So there was that agreement about how to deal, especially in the light of the number of incidents of violence, no, against the Tedurais and other different groups in Maguindanao, no? Third, I think also, I really like the participation of Secretary Piñol for two things. No, he was the one who raised the issue about, you know, him and Teddy Bagilat actually said it doesn't matter whether or not the black grant or the funding they get is going to be increased or going to be lowered. They said what should happen is that, you know, we should really look into how effective and how efficient has been the use of the black grant and the special development fund over here. So taking all of those into consideration, everyone gave a good position on particular issues. I agree with Benny in terms of looking at the totality of the handling and of course also the relationship. Malakas yung position rin ni Teddy, no? Kasi mas alliance ang framework niya.
Okay. I'd like to go to the latest Pulse Asia survey. Of course, this was conducted in February 18 to 23. So, intayin niyo yung susunod sa March. Pero ito yung pinakahuli na nirelease nila. No? I was looking at the numbers. So of course, Bongbong Marcos had 60% ng pakataas. And then in Mindanao, he had 68%. Help us understand his, at least based on the survey, so his immense popularity there in Mindanao, including Muslim Mindanao, despite the history. Kasi ngayon, baka hindi familiar iba, today is the anniversary of the Jabida Massacre. 1968. Okay.
Yeah.
Would like to go. Would you like to go first, Professor Lara?
Well, yes. I think what explains that popularity, well, based on what the surveys say, I would really doubt whether, as you said, those are the final numbers. No, I think there's a surge also of votes coming from the different opposition groups. No, but the point is, we should remember that Mindanao right now is predominantly Christian already, predominantly Catholic. And there were long histories of exploitation and oppression against the Moros. By the martial law government, the Jabida Massacre was one important issue there, but also other issues, the Palembang Massacre,
Yeah.
A lot of killings that happened, and there are a lot of transitional justice issues that date back to the Marcos regime. So that is why I would say that in the Bangsamoro, there is still that animosity and there is still that anger over what happened there. But the Bangsamoro now is dwarfed by a majority Christian population who were settlers and who fought against the Moros. A lot of them were also part of the different paramilitary groups, that organized the Ilagas, etc. And then, of course, there is this reigning discrimination still against the Muslims. And I suppose those people are those who are voting for Marcos.
Okay, Attorney Benny, what do you think?
Well, traditionally, I'm focusing on the Bangsamoro. Whoever is the candidate endorsed by the incumbent president, Bangsamoro. That has always been, whether that's local elections or national elections. And that is, the political families there were all for the of President Duterte, and happens that he endorsed it. But definitely, talagang si Sara Duterte. So ano yan? So that's I think one of the reasons, because of Sara, and then so that's why Bongbong also, But we have to understand also that a lot of these political families in the Bangsamoro were actually thrived, because of Marcos. So you see, even infrastructure, this autonomous region complex now, that's Marcos. And then it was Marcos also who created the two autonomous regions, which a lot of leaders still want. So especially for those in the Basulta area, especially now when they're feeling that they are left out, in the implementation of this peace agreement and in the governance of the region. So I was there, and I think there's this sense that maybe under Marcos that we would have more to benefits out of this, because there will be focus, on for the Basulta area. So I think that explains the and of course the settlers, as Pancho mentioned. So sino ba talaga nag-push niya, nag-promote? It was Marcos. So kaya I think meron talagang traction, even sa Bangsamoro. But of course, sa revolutionary groups, ibang usapan yun. So sa revolutionary groups, those who have really ideology and fronts, So ibang usapan yun. So they'll be more critical, of the Marcoses.
Okay, let's go to a related issue, yung security issues sa Bangsamoro. Professor Lara, how do you think the next president should deal with the problem of violent extremism, especially those based in the war? Especially in light of the Marawi siege that we saw, how significant, how devastating the impact of ISIS-affiliated terrorist groups could be.
Where they are resilient, they still thrive in many places in the Bangsamoro, and we know that for a fact because there have been recent flashpoints in relation to Dawla Islamiyah. I think the next administration should put more focus on the non-security aspects of dealing with violent extremism. Much of the work has been on the security related aspects, and that says, for example, the interdiction, the arrest, the attacks on communities harboring, for example, ISIS groups still operating. There have been less of the transitional justice issues being addressed. I think that should be an important focus of the next administration. Pushing the Bangsamoro to legislate a land law will be very important. Also in the fight against violent extremism, the next administration should put some emphasis on the unsettled issues regarding the sins of the past, the transitional justice issues which have not yet been tackled. So there's a lot of work for the new government. And as Benny said, this is not only the government of the region, this is the national government trying to push what was agreed upon in the peace agreement and in the Bangsamoro Organic Law.
Oh, by the way, where are we in the decommissioning process of the MILF combatants?
Well, our understanding, based on our own data and our own investigation, is very little that's really happened. There has been some decommissioning, but look, how many arms are we talking about? Based on our data, there are about 55,000 loose weapons in the Bangsamoro alone. And you're talking about an agreement that will only decommission at most 12,000, and only half of those will be committed to be decommissioned by the MILF according to the agreement, despite the fact that they claim that they have 40,000 combatants and 12,000 weapons. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of the decommissioning, and not only the decommissioning, but more importantly, running after illicit weapons in the region. And frankly, we have not seen the dramatic or significant process in that aspect, which is really what people will be looking at when they talk normalization.
Okay. Attorney Benny, isang issue dito nung pinag-uusapan yung dapat pambigyan ng additional 3 years yung BTA. Yung BTA po, ito po sa mga nanonood sa atin, yung Bangsamoro Transition Authority. Ito po yung interim o pangkasalukuyang gobyerno na namamahala sa BARM habang iniintay po yung first parliamentary elections nila na dapat gagawin niya yung Mayo. Pero i-move na po sa 2025. So, Attorney Ben, I remember one of the contentious points there during the deliberations in Congress was which president would be allowed to actually appoint the members of the BTA. Okay? So, nakalagay dun sa batas na ipinasa, medyo vague, no? I don't know whether that was intended to be vague. So, the president may appoint. So, sa inyo, dapat ba yung next president, should he or she change the composition of the BTA?
Well, yung interpretation yan is either this current president or the incoming president can appoint, no? Kasi hindi naman na-mention doon. So, but the President Duterte has already made a decision that he will not appoint or reorganize, no? So, which means that status quo, okay, unless he wants to replace those who are running, no, or who will win, no, in the elections. Kasi may mga members ng BTA na tumatakbo, no? And baka manalo sila, no? So, but the next president, yun nga yung tinanong doon, no, sa forum. So, will your presidential candidate appoint you? No? So, of course, hindi naman sila hindi naman talaga sila nag-commit to appoint or not. But I could see yung kay Mayor Isko, they were talking about continuity, no? Very talaga sila. I think they're getting the votes. So really the endorsement of the MILF. So talagang continue kayo, no? Kasi ang pinaka-contentious issue naman talaga diyan, Christian, is the composition, no, of the BTA, no? Because this is supposed to be MILF led, but in the BOL, it doesn't really say there that they will be majority, no, in membership, kasi that was already removed by Congress, no? So peace agreement, yes, it says there MILF led in leadership and membership, but Congress said that no, this might be unconstitutional kasi class legislation yun. So we cannot say that this particular group should be the majority, no? But it is a political commitment by Duterte, no? So which means that will that be a political commitment or political decision also of the next president? So that's very interesting to note. Kasi I think the problem of inclusivity is a real problem, no? In the next 3 years, I think that's a very fundamental problem. Even the third-party monitoring team, okay, that assesses the implementation of the agreement mentions na talagang there's a need for this peace process, the implementation to be more inclusive. Governance must be more inclusive. But if the next 3 years you still have the MILF there as as MILF not only leading but majority, which means that they totally, absolutely, control the BTA, legislation, policy, budget. Okay, will that still promote inclusivity, or people would still feel na they don't belong, no? So kasi everything is decided by that frame. So but having said that, the MILF has to reach out, no? It doesn't mean naman na kahit na sila naman ang majority, they can always be more inclusive, no? So there's a need to reach out, to the other players so that they can do as well. But for the next president, if he or she is gonna appoint, ano yung maging parang framework niya?
Okay. Finally, Professor Lara, let's talk about Marawi. So obviously, mamanahin na ng next president yung rehabilitation ng Marawi. Tapos it took a while before Congress actually approved the Marawi compensation bill. So how should the next president, may nakikita ba kayong clear commitment so far ng mga tumatakbo sa pagkapangulo doon sa rehabilitation ng Marawi?
Yeah. I think the interesting thing is now it is in the table. I think it's a table of the president already. The Senate has already transmitted. So we don't know whether he's going to sign, whether it will lapse into law. No? But the next administration has its hands full in trying to continue the rehabilitation because Task Force Bangon Marawi has just announced already that they cannot finish it before the end of the term of the president. They're talking already about continuing it under the new administration. We don't know whether the TFBM will still exist or whether that commitment will still be there. The interesting thing is all of the people who attended the forum said that they will continue and they will pursue and they will facilitate the rehabilitation of Marawi. To that extent, we were very happy because we were really active in the Marawi compensation bill struggle within Congress and the Senate. Secondly, it is really important because the issue of the reconstruction is being tapped by violent extremists. They're using it as a recruitment tool. They're using it as a mobilizing issue already. In contrast to the past, where they knew that they could not use it because they were responsible for the destruction as well of the city. Now they're tapping into it. So it really has to be finished. And people need to be, it's a nice thing that came out from the forum. Everyone said people need to be allowed to immediately return already.
Professor Pancho Lara and Attorney Benny Bacani, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight on the program.
Thanks for having us, Christian.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
So that's it for tonight. This has been your host, Christian Esguerra. You can watch this episode again on iWantTFC or listen to our podcast on Spotify. Now, for recaps and other exclusive content, subscribe to the ANC YouTube channel and catch up with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. See you again on Monday after the fact.